Many thanks, Kunle, for that background. With us in the studios to discuss this issue, we would like to welcome Tanimu Inoa, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Director in charge of litigation and prosecution at the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Tanimu, SAN, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay. Also joining us via Zoom for this conversation, would like to welcome Dr. Leonard Nzenwa, is Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC. Dr. Nzenwa, delighted to have you with us via Zoom this morning.
It's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much for having me on the program.
Okay, now let's begin the conversation with the INEC Director in charge of litigation and prosecution. The National Assembly has eventually now passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021. We do know that INEC itself made a number of proposals for the amendment. Are you, from the point of view of INEC, satisfied with the provisions in the bill as passed by the National Assembly?
Good morning, Nigeria, once again. Well, I think, as you rightly pointed out, INEC made suggestions and made proposals to the amendments of the Electoral Act. And the National Assembly factored us into the process. We had meetings, conferences with them. We look at various sections of the law, the Electoral Act, and then we agreed. And overall, I can say INEC is satisfied with the amendment.
I'm sure, INEC must be sigh of relief that finally the Electoral Amendment Act Bill 2021 has been signed into law, but waiting for assent by the President, has been passed, sorry. What is unique about this Electoral Act to INEC, and how would it, precede the elections by 2023? How will it affect it? How will it impact it?
Well, the essence of the amendment generally is to improve upon the integrity of the electoral process in Nigeria. What I mean by improving the integrity of the electoral process is the issue of vote counting, meaning that each vote cast in an election should count. In other words, the process or the period where a group of people will just hijack the process and then determine whatever they want, I think it's over. We want a situation whereby Nigerians will determine who leads the country. People in a particular state will determine who heads or who governs the state. Voters in a particular local government will come together and determine who governs that local government. That is the overall intention.
Okay, two of the, if you like, very well-known provisions in the bill,
yes,
have to do with electronic transmission of results, part of which we were speaking to a moment ago.
Yes.
And the other one, of course, also has to do with how political parties choose their candidates for election. That is to say, direct versus indirect primaries. And what has been passed now is for direct primaries. Yes. We will return to these two issues subsequently.
Yes.
But tell us, from the point of view of litigation and prosecution, yes, are there new provisions in the law that could enhance the work of INEC? Because we know that INEC gets swamped in every election cycle by a gale of litigation.
Yes. Well, from the point of view of prosecution, the concern always is the issue of impunity. That people commit electoral offenses, and then they go scot-free. But this time around, the new Electoral Act has made a kind of stringent prohibitions, like the issue of falsification of results, thuggery and all those things now, whereby anybody who is caught and then prosecuted, there are serious jail terms and then heavy fines against all those things now. So I believe if when the law is properly signed and then we start implementing the law, I believe Nigerians will see the difference.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to you to talk more on that. And let's now join Dr. Leonard Nzenwa, Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. It is expected that, the bill passed can deepen Nigeria's democratic experience and probably make our electoral process relatively foolproof. What's your take on that?
Well, every legislation is intended to make things better for the people, whether democratically or non-democratically. I think the motivation for this particular bill is to see how to sanitize and also to regulate the political space properly and for the betterment of all stakeholders. However, when a stakeholder is unhappy with the content of a bill, it definitely will impact how that particular bill or how that particular law will be run or used. Now, I need to say upfront that the two key things that is in the Electoral Amendment Act, that of electronic transmission of election results and direct primary, is something we are also very happy with. But let me start with, when the transmission of electronic result electrically was reversed by National Assembly, IPAC told Nigerians that we should not be melodramatic about this particular victory at that particular time. The reason was because we, based on our position and the intel we got, we knew there was something that was a fish that was going to happen. And predictably, after that, we now saw an insertion. We saw an insertion of the direct primary. Now, we need to be very clear about this. Now, when the insertion was done, the original bill never contained this particular insertion of direct primaries. It was left in the way it was, where we have it is at the liberty of the political parties to either do direct primary or not do direct primary. So for us, it does not sit well with the political parties. It was an afterthought that is plotted to smoke out younger political parties from the political space. Now, we just have to be very careful with the way we go about this. Now, the original bill, this is because the original bill, which was subjected to joint public hearing by both the Senate and the House of Representatives on Wednesday, December 9, 2020, at the National Assembly Complex in Abuja, didn't contain the insertion of Section 87, subsections 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There was only the insertion of Section 87, subsection 1 and subsection 2, which provides that subsection 1 seeks to enact a new Section 87 on the nomination of candidates by parties for elections by prescribing maximum fees payable by aspirants and restricting nomination criteria strictly for relevant provisions. What am I saying? This is an afterthought, it's an insertion. It does not sit well with the political parties, and we need to also say it outrightly. Now, let's ask ourselves, why are we asking political parties to go headlong direct primaries? We are basically introducing the Antenian democratic principle or the Antenian democratic model, which prescribes direct primaries. Now, this is the year 2021. How can we try to get back the Antenian democratic model, where you have the principle of sortition, where you have people who will come out and vote physically? We need to understand we need to understand if a political party, for instance, has a 10 million membership base, what it does require is that this 10 membership base or political party will have to vote directly to either get members of the National Assembly or the Senate, the governor or the president. So it's a very complex legislation. And let me say that we are not comfortable with it, and we are still consulting on how this can be done. So we're happy we are making some progress, but this particular insertion is something we are not happy with, and we are calling on Nigerians to see how this can be prevailed on National Assembly, even as it has gone to the president, that particular aspect will need to be reconsidered.
I'm just wondering, Dr. Zenwa, you've raised a number of issues around the direct primaries provision, harking back to the Athenian idea of democracy. What is wrong with having direct primaries if it is intended to deal with the challenges that we have faced in the instant republic, namely the use of money bags and the manipulation of the delegate system in the indirect primaries that we have often had? What is wrong with direct primaries? I'll give you an example so that you can frame your answer around this. You say if a party has a membership base of 10 million, then it might complicate the elections. If you are going to the Senate, it is only members of your party who are in your senatorial district that will go to vote for the candidate of the party, or to vote for aspirants so that the candidate of the party will emerge. If you are going to the House of Representatives, it is only members of your party who are in the federal constituency that will go out to vote. If you are going to the House of Assembly, it is only members of your party who are in your constituency that will vote for you. It doesn't mean that you have to assemble 10 million members in one location to vote for candidates.
Okay, thanks for your questions. But when you are outside the space, when you're outside the political field, the practical political field, it looks very simple. It looks non-complex. It looks very easy when you look at it from that angle. But when you're in the field, you now understand the challenges that are involved. And most times, I tell you, you are in the studio now, you're feeling the comfort of the AC. I will not tell you exactly your experience in that particular environment because you understand exactly what it is. But if you get to the field where it is actually happening, you will now understand why we say it is pretty very difficult to implement. Now, Nigerian politicians are very experienced and very crafty people, and it is a function and reflection of the Nigerian system. There's no doubt about that. Now, even where we have borrowed the presidential system of government, it's a combination, it's a collegiate system. It's a combination of direct and indirect. Now, I don't understand the motivation because we need to understand the motivation why this was introduced. This was not an original part of that particular bill. This was hurriedly done. That's what I want us to know. This was hurriedly done, and it was a backlash between some members of the National Assembly and the state governors. Let's be very practical about it. It's a fight on how one political party. Let's maybe be very, very specific. It is a fight in between one political parties on how to control the governors, the structures of the party, as well between them and the members of the National Assembly. And so this fight between the two arms or two organs of the political party is what is affecting the political system as a whole. So what we are saying is, specifically in terms of challenge, you have just stated it here. Why would the National Assembly make it compulsory, mandatory, not optional for political parties to have a choice whether it is going to be direct or not or indirect? Now, let me also give you one clear example. The recruitment process in political parties in Nigeria is very complex. Members do not fulfill their obligations as active members of political parties. I've made this point over and over again. Now, in Nigeria, we have less than 0.02% of members of political parties that actually comply and obey the rules and regulations or responsibility of political parties. For instance, most members of political parties do not pay their dues. Now, it is left for the leadership of the parties and other phalanges of the party to undertake here. So the clear challenge is this. You will not have credible members in that quote, who will now amass themselves to conduct a direct primary, whether it is at the world level, whether it is at the state level, whether it's at local government, at the national level. We have challenges. And so what we are saying is that direct primary is not evil in itself, but the motivation that informed why it is being introduced now is the question, and it does not sit well with every person. We need a gradual build-up before we get to this level. At this level, we have not got to that point. What we are trying to do is to throw spanner in the work. With appropriate time when we get there, we can say that for now, the logistics is not available, the infrastructure is not available, the resources is not available, and even the well-groomed and well-grounded political membership is not on ground for us to have this kind of direct primary. And so for us, it is a no. We need to find a blend between this and all that, or else we'll have a serious issue around having primaries in both political parties. Already the way it is with indirect primaries, we're having so much problems. If we introduce direct primaries, those are the hems of affairs in the parties. We stay somewhere, write the results, and they will not be happy for every person. Don't forget, somebody who did not partake, don't partake in any of the primary, direct primary, whether it's in Katsina or anywhere, can sue the national body of the party that he or she never participated in that particular primary, and that'll be a problem. So we are likely going to have much more litigations for members of the party across the federation, and that is something the parties cannot handle at this point. And the other thing is this: INEC itself does not have that kind of resources in terms of logistics, in terms of manpower, in terms of all that we're with that to monitor and observe these elections across all political parties across this country. I have discussed with even members of the APC, members of the PDP, and other political parties, and how they have conducted their primaries in the last few weeks. The feedback is very, very nightmarish. That is on the basis of indirect primaries. Now, they themselves are not even happy with what is going on. This is being projected and promoted by very few individuals, and we are not comfortable with it. It's not good for our own polity, and we should say it right that we need to get to that point. For now, it is not the best for us. Let us get to that point before we can do that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Leonard Ezenwa. You started your response to that last question by saying that, well, we are in the studios, and the studios, of course, can be very comfortable because of the air conditioning system, and that the feeling out there in the field is a different one. You've been our guest here in the studios. You know that it's actually very comfy, and where you are speaking to us from is also comfortable for you. The field can be rough. We understand that. But there are a number of considerations. I mean, we could begin to break it down. I'll return to you presently for us to break it down, that if this is indeed a fight between members of the National Assembly and the governors on the one hand, some political observers have said, why not? Let us see the outcome of the engagement. Governors, as you very well know, have been branded as, the oligarchs who have cornered the political space since 1999. Sometimes they are also referred to as emperors, that you cannot become an elected person if you don't have the approval of the governor. And some persons are asking, why should that be so?
Let me be very clear. You have corporate politics. You have politics in every segment of our life. Right in your organization there, you do have politics. It depends on how you want to classify it. In churches, we have politics. In the market environment, we also have politics. People play politics from different dimensions in various ways. And so, in political parties, there are intense politics because that is what the political parties are structured. Now, you've mentioned the fight between the governors, who are the oligarchs, and members of the National Assembly. It is essentially about internal party politics and the control of structures of political parties. That is what is happening here, which is intense politics. So what is going to happen is that the politics is in there, the politicking is in there, the politicking is in there. Now, it is who is better at this game. At this game, the governors, because of the structure of the Nigerian Constitution, because of the empowerment, constitutional empowerment imposed on the governors of this country, they have so much power. This power is not by the political party. It is not the political parties that vested them with this power. It is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that invested so much power on the part of the governors, just as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria also invested so much power on the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We've had it several times say that the Nigerian president is the most powerful president in the universe. Now, it is also the same for the state governors. The governors of Nigeria across various states are the most powerful governors across the whole world. Now, with this kind of power, a governor sits as a king, a governor sits as a lord, a governor sits as the arbiter of whatever happens within his domain, including the structure of political parties across the states. Now, as it is currently structured, it is the governors, from our experience, practical experience, that funds most of the activities of political parties. The governors, to a very large extent, across many states, invest more in the growth of political parties than many of party members. Now, if somebody puts his money down and puts his resources down, the natural thing is that he or she wants to get back what he has invested in that particular place. I'm being very practical about it. And we need to understand why I'm saying this. I'm saying this because when you go to some states, you see how the governors control the political parties. It's because control the government and political parties within that state. It's because of the resources they have put down on that particular state. So now, as it regards the members of the National Assembly and that of the governors, this is a direct fallout of what happened during the last APC primary. Let me just be specific. And a lot of members of the National Assembly felt shortchanged. Many of them felt they were beaten out of the game. And so the best way they can get out of it is to get back to the governors, who they feel is in charge of the party structure in place. Now, what do? We need to address this point by looking at such provisions of the Constitution that has empowered the governors to this extent. If we can look at that, we can now say, yes, you can address and whittle the powers of the governors. But if that is not addressed, we might find it very difficult curtailing the enormous power of the governors across the states. The party won't be able to do that. The party can only say and guide and also give its own directive and guide, but it cannot stop the governors from the enormous power which the Constitution has invested in them. And it's because of this enormous power which they hang on that has made them to superintend and override even political decisions, both on the political party and every other issues. So basically, to address the powers of the governors, we need to look into our Constitution to find a way to whittle it down. It is only in so doing that we can now find a way to find some stability around and also checkmate this crisis between members of the National Assembly as well as the governors across the states.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Leonard Nzenwa. Let's return to the studio where Tanimu Inua SAN is standing by. You know, since the passage of the Electoral Act bill amendment as amended 2021, there's been a lot of bickering by politicians. And Mr. Leonard has raised some issues of the financial independence of INEC. Politics is for the people, by the people. Why are politicians afraid of going for direct primaries?
Well, I think this is also my concern. Because let us look at the delegate system. The delegate system is a system whereby members of political party come together and delegate their powers to certain number of people. Then those people, they will now go on and exercise that power on their behalf. Now the law says, okay, every member of political party should exercise the power himself. So what is the problem? Another issue is, the man raised the issue of, Electoral raised the issue of financial membership of the political parties. The law as it is now gives the political parties the power to come up with the guidelines for the conduct of the direct primaries. Now, to me, part of it may be that, okay, you know your members, and it is only your members that will participate in the process. So what is the problem? If you are not up to date financially, you are out already. And I cannot see how that will affect the integrity of the process. All that the political party needs to do is to have their register of members. Once they have their register of members, they know this is my member, this is my member, this is my member, and it's time to vote. So I can't see, well, to me, well, on the side of INEC, you know, we're an agency of government and we're to implement the law. The law is passed and we're getting ready for its implementation.
Is it a relief for INEC, you know, taking into cognizance what happened in 2019, where some states went for direct, some went for indirect primaries. Is it a sigh of relief for you, and it has lessened the burden of your work if they go direct?
Well, not as such. Not as such. The issue is that, well, when you look at the previous law, the law that has been amended, it gives the political parties the discretion to choose between either direct primaries or indirect primaries. And as I said, whichever way you look at it, it is the members of the political party that determines who gets what. In other words, if you want to be a delegate, you present yourself to the members of the party to elect you as a delegate to go and present you at the higher level. Now, the law said that, okay, everybody should participate in it. As far as INEC is concerned, as I said, INEC is now studying the law and getting ready to comply with it. How? Remember, we have about 120,000 of thereabout polling units, and we conduct election in all the units. We deploy our staff. And then, I believe the lowest denomination of political party administration is at the world level, meaning that I know we don't have more than 10,000 electoral wards in Nigeria. So if we can effectively deploy our staff and resources to 120,000 polling units, what more of deploying resources to 10,000 voting centers for the political parties? So as far as I'm concerned, INEC, as I said, is studying this process and is getting ready to participate in the process.
So, sorry, I would like you to go over this again, Inua.
Yes, sir.
Because Dr. Leonard Zenwa was raising the issue about INEC's capacity to monitor party primaries if they are direct. And here you are giving the example. What is it that INEC can do when parties are conducting their direct primaries? Does INEC have the capacity, the wherewithal to monitor?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I said that INEC, we have 120,000 polling units in Nigeria where we conduct election. For instance, we conducted the presidential election in 2019, and we deploy our staff to all those 120,000 polling units to conduct
Staff and ad hoc.
And ad hoc staff. Yeah. It's the same thing. We just replicate this process in the conduct of direct primaries. What we need to do is INEC will now develop it will send timetables and guide for the conduct of the party primaries. In sending the timetables, each political party will now send to the commission when it's going to conduct its own party primaries and where and how. Then we now factor all this into our activities. As I said, we conducted election in 120,000 polling units. What about monitoring election in 10,000 polling units? What INEC does is the political parties develop the guideline for the conduct of the primaries, and it will now send its staff to go and monitor whether the political parties in the conduct of the primaries comply with the guidelines. That's exactly what we do. And then we develop our reports and keep it to ourselves. Okay. Now, where there is dispute as regard to whether the primaries of the political party is conducted according with the guidelines or not, sometimes when it goes to the court will ask us to bring our report, monitoring report. Our monitoring report will spell everything what happened at the primaries. And, the issue is, you see that sometimes we monitor the primaries. Mr. A wins the primaries. But when it comes to the nomination, the party will present Mr. B. And the law is that the person that wins the primaries is the candidate of the party. The party has no discretion, has no option. It must nominate that particular person. And in fact, the recent decision of the Supreme Court, it says that the nomination takes place at the primaries. Once the primaries is conducted and a winner emerges, he has been nominated
as a candidate
of the party. So
through the direct primaries?
Whatever primary, either direct primary or indirect primaries.
But with indirect primaries, we've seen a lot of litigations following the elections.
Yes, that's what we're saying, and that's why the report of INEC monitoring the political parties' primaries comes into aid, because sometimes political party, as I said, Mr. A will have won the primaries. The party will now say, no, I don't like Mr. A, we'll go for Mr. B.
Like what happened in Zamfara?
In Zamfara, and not even Zamfara, so many other places. So many other places, we have a situation whereby, like I know in Kaduna, Lere Federal Constituency, there's one engineer, Aliu Lere, who happened to win the party primaries during the 2019 primaries, come down to National Assembly election. The party, in its APC, in its wisdom, submitted somebody's name. Lere went to court, and our primary report indicated that it was Lere that won the primaries. And the court did not have any problem. It returned Lere as elected. And it returned his mandate to him, I mean. So the same thing goes to the direct primary. When the political parties develop their guidelines for the conduct of the direct primaries, they will now specify the area where they will conduct the direct primaries. As Kingsley just said, if it is, for instance, a senatorial election, we go to the senatorial district and conduct the direct primaries. We collect the result. The person that got the highest number of votes emerges as the candidate of the political party. So what is the difficulty in that?
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Tanimu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for the explanation you provided, because these are some of the practical challenges that have been raised with regard to how INEC can effectively monitor party primaries if they are direct and taking place on the same occasion. But as you have said, INEC conducts election in 120,000 local government polling units across the country. So why not for party direct primaries? We are being joined at this time by another guest, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, who is chair of the House Committee on Media, and is also the spokesperson of the House of Representatives. Honorable Benjamin Kalu, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Just before we come to you, let's return to Dr. Leonard Nzenwa. Dr. Leonard Nzenwa, chairman of IPAC, still with us via Zoom. There are a few points I would like you to clarify. Well, the realistic view is that, look, state governors have tremendous influence on the polity and on the politics. And that this influence, in your opinion, derives from the fact that they are so enabled by the Constitution. But it is also the view that the financial empowerment that are sometimes deployed by some state governors, it is alleged, it's also one that doesn't create a level playing field. I know that a former chairman of IPAC had, in our studios here, complained that the ordeal of the smaller political parties is that they don't have access to state resources, and that the more established political parties have access to state resources, and therefore this doesn't create a competitive playing field. Are you seeking, therefore, to maintain the status quo whereby the entrenched political parties with their tentacles in the states continue to have access to state resources, while the smaller political parties languish in the shadows?
Well, Kingsley, thank you again for these particular questions. Of course, I did emphasize the enormous power which the governors of the various state governments have as invested on them by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. One of the key things we have done in the last few weeks, in the last few months, is to see how we can make the political system for everyone. That is, when I say the political system, I'm talking about the electoral system itself, having all political parties to be part of the cake, in that sense. Now, one of the things we realized is that there is no political party that has won election, hardly win elections across the states, if not the incumbent or the party in power in that state. And I'm using local government elections as a basis or comparison. Now, you do know that the states have what they call the State Independent Electoral Commission, as distinct and separate from the National Independent Electoral Committee. Now, this State Independent Electoral Committee organizes the elections within the domains of these states. And now we have observed over the last few months that no particular or younger political parties have won elections across these states. What did we realize? We realized that the governors and the instruments of these particular state independent electoral commissions work together to frustrate younger political parties from having access or winning elections. And so we made a clear request and demand, and which we also made the proposal to the National Assembly during the joint session that we need to scrap all the SIEC. We need to scrap the SIEC across the federation so that the younger political parties across the states can be empowered. Now, this proposal was trashed to the bin. It was not taken. Now, what that has also left is that we are not deepening democracy across the states and also encouraging older political parties to continue to perpetuate their hold and fold across all the states. So the thing we have put in place is that this state independent electoral commission will have to be scrapped. So if that is scrapped now, all political parties will be on the same playing field, and we can now have opportunity to fight it out in the political ground. As it stands so now, some are given greater elbow room while others are disenfranchised. Now, let me also get back to the point that the Director of Litigation and NTA just made. Now, let me make it clear that we have over 170,000 polling units across the Federation. Over 170,000. Now, if we are going to, if the president signs on direct primaries, what will happen is this. Most of the political parties have clearly stated in their particular constitution, in their various constitution, that it is either direct or indirect primaries. So that means the political parties will have to go back now to go and review their constitutions, hold conventions, and also now adopt the direct primaries that has been imposed on them now to do so. It's also going to give a lot of costs and a lot of challenges to the political parties to go back and hold conventions. So the point I'm making is this: it is not that too easy. Now, in reference to having direct primary in the Senate, now let's assume you have a senatorial zone that have over 50,000 polling units, for instance. Now, and you have a number of, let's say, 700 per polling units, 700 per polling units. Now, the metrics, the way this is going to be organized, have not been clearly worked out. So what we're saying is there's going to be a lot of challenges in implementing these direct primaries. Now, even if you look at the colleges system that we are borrowing from, now, that is in terms of presidential system of government, it is basically a mix of direct and indirect. You have a direct arrangement, you have indirect arrangement. So the point being made is that we should have the way it is left in the way INEC has, the way it is before. That is, a political party should either use direct primary or indirect primary as it fits them, as they are comfortable with. If it's not in that manner, it will have some challenges. So why I keep saying this is because when you are not in the house, it looks very easy, it looks very smooth. But when you get into this house, you know that it is not pretty easy the way you look at it. Then finally, I need to also repeat, the antennial direct primary is factored on limited suffrage. That is, even in that arrangement, you only have male of 20 years old who will now vote. And apart from that male of 20 years, women were not involved. Apart from male of 20 years, they have a program they call sortition. In this case, it's like a lucky dip, where some elites or people from that particular environment or that particular county in the antennial era will now come out and do a lucky dip. Anyone that wins will not have the right to vote or not to vote. So you have what we call the sortition. So it is not clearly a direct primary that is also anchored on universal suffrage. So what we're saying is we cannot replicate the antennial era of model of direct primaries, what we have here. What we are saying is this: it should be a mix between direct primary and indirect primary and allow the parties to also find a way to work it out themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard Ezenwa. You've raised a lot and lots and lots of pertinent questions, but we need to bring in Honorable Benjamin Kalu. He's a spokesperson of the House of Representatives. Thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the passage of the bill.
You can say that again. Thank you.
So let's talk about the impact on the electioneering process and internal democracy. How do you think it will affect it? You know, elections, we have elections next year, we have elections 2023. How will the Electoral Amended Bill Act itself affect the electioneering process? And, an internal democracy of which you are, a beneficiary.
Yes, you can say that again as
Yes.
well. Yes, I actually came on, thank you for having me. And I must say that I came on board through direct primaries. Yes. If not because of direct primaries, I wouldn't be here today. So, the impact of this particular piece of legislation seeks to solve certain problems. One is the longing of Nigerians to decentralize the selection process in the political parties, and also to break the hegemony that has captured the nomination of candidates. Secondly, the impact of this legislation will foster better political party development. You're going to have a situation where parties will be compelled to compile, sustain, update verifiable registration membership list, which will be accessible not only to a handful of people, but to all the members of the party, especially the aspirants. With this particular legislation, there is hope for the young people. There is hope for the not too young to run bill, because this legislation is going to increase the probability of high participation of youths and women who have been sitting on the fence because of fear of what godfatherism would do to them. So they are going to have the opportunity to step into the arena and through their mobilization effort, make impact to be selected without recourse to what you call the godfatherism. Another one, as a nation, is going to increase the democratic quotient of the political activities in the country. As we struggle to become one of the best, in democracy, as we want to copy the advanced democracies, as we want to be advanced in our democracy, certain steps are expected. There are certain expectations that we must meet if we want to equal with people that we want to be like. And this is one of them: increasing transparency and accountability, returning the political parties to the people, returning the process of selecting your leaders to the people, not a handful of individuals. And that is what democracy represents. We are now, by this legislation, going to give the full definition of democracy a meaning. Remember, the word government appeared once in the definition of democracy, and the people appeared 3 times. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It occurred once, twice, 3, So when a certain group of people says, no, this is how we want it to be done, against the wishes of the people, the hunger, the desire of the people, you are redefining the definition of democracy, and it ought not to be so. So this legislation, this 9th House of Representatives and the Senate, they want to give democracy meaning by returning power to the people, as expected by the definition of democracy. So Nigerians should be happy that we have opened the windows for the next generation. We have opened the space for others to come on board and participate. And it is high time new blood will be injected into the political space. So that is the impact it's going to have in Nigeria.
I'm just wondering, why you give this explanation. Earlier, Dr. Leonard Zenwa claimed that it is all masked to paper over the intense competition between state governors and mostly members of the National Assembly. That is supremacy contest. is one that has now found its way into the provision of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. That is to say, diminish the influence and power of state governors and then let it be open, that you are fighting a supremacy war rather than a war on behalf of the people, as you claim.
As you know, the spectacle from which you view a piece of legislation is actually dependent on where you are standing and what is available to you. An interpretation of statutes, it's always good to find out the intent of the legislatures when they made that law. He is not the legislature. I am one. And I can tell you, our intention for the amendment of the Electoral Act was to reflect the desire of Nigerians to be part of the process. It has been within the exclusive reserve of a few, and it ought not to be so. We came on board and we say we are going to lay a legacy that Nigerians will be proud of. Many never believed that we were going to push the PIB to become PIA. We did it. Many never believed that we'll return the budget calendar from what it used to be to the constitutional calendar, which is January to February. We did it. We shook the table and we did it. Now we have come with the Electoral Act, very important aspect of our democracy. And we are doing it. We have fulfilled the expectation of the 9 years of making a piece of legislation. It is a bit myopic to view it as executive legislature context. It is not. What happens to the interests of the people? What are the people on the streets saying about elections in Nigeria? What is the view of the people? You see, they call us rubber stamp. And they say we do the bid of the executive. And when we take our stand and we say, this is what the people want, the people that we are defending will not take the side of the people's parliament. And it ought not to be so. What we have done is a representation of the feedback that we got through our various engagements, especially public hearing on that piece of legislation, what the people said. We are only doing what the people want. And to do otherwise is to answer to a few. And remember, when we came on board, when we were inaugurated, we said, we will not carry our duty, with fear and favor, affection. We said we will do it without fear and favor, affection or ill will. So a decision to favor a few to the displeasure of the much of the population is actually dishonorable for honorable members like us. So we are on the side of the people on this one, and Nigerians should celebrate us for standing firmly to represent what they want. We are doing what the people want, and the people should be happy about it.
All right. Jumai, well, let's thank Honorable Benjamin Kalu for the response. Senior Advocate of Nigeria is also here. I thank you one more time for your explanation, except that you were tried also to usurp the authority and powers of the judiciary when you were talking about interpretation of statutes, that the purpose is to discover the intention of the legislature. You were not speaking as a houseman, but that discovery is made by the judiciary, not by the House.
No, I was happy to
Okay, we'll come back to the conversation right after this break. Don't go away.
All right, you're welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Broadcasting from our Abuja National Headquarters. We have another guest who is joining us for this conversation. She's a regular on Good Morning Nigeria, Cynthia Mbamalu. She's Director of Programs at Yaga Africa. Cynthia, pleasure to have you. I don't know where you are joining us from, but the last time we had you from Oka, Anambra, ahead of the elections, you were... Yes. You gave us the sweetest impression that all was well with Anambra, and indeed, all was well right up through to the end of elections. Good to have you this morning.
Thank you, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, so we, of course, by returning to a familiar topic, this time it's been passed now by the two chambers of the National Assembly. That's to say the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021. One of the two contentious issues has to do with direct primaries. The other, of course, has to do with electronic transmission of results. That is less contentious now. What are your thoughts on the issue of direct primaries? We see governors are up in arms seeking to mobilize our stakeholders. In particular, we understand the Attorney General of the Federation to weigh in on the president to withhold his accent.
It's been an interesting past few weeks since the Senate and the House passed the bill of the Electoral Amendment Bill. And I think it's just nice to listen to the conversations from both sides of the divide. But we should ask ourselves, how did we get here? Because there's also an importance in providing a context to the reason why the proposal for direct primaries were made. But before I get into that, I think it's important we clearly state that either the indirect or direct primaries, both methods have their pros and their cons. What is important is in the strict compliance with the method or the procedures for either the direct or indirect primaries. However, what we have seen over a period of time is whether the direct or indirect primaries, parties have found ways to manipulate that, thereby creating a situation where the primaries have fallen short of democratic standard and principles. So if you think about previous election, I remember I was on Good Morning Nigeria in 2018 during pre the primaries for the 2019 general elections. And there was a lot of conversation on the primaries themselves. And it was clear that over a long period of time, we haven't had primaries that were truly democratic, inclusive, and transparent. And even opening up the space for women and for young people who were coming into the field, and even for just new players. And there was a question around, how do we fix this problem? Now, while there are several arguments on why the National Assembly decided to adopt the direct primary, if you watched the third reading, it was actually the speaker that proposed that the indirect be deleted from the when the bill was passed at third reading in the House, and subsequently the Senate came a recommittal and adopted direct also. There must be a reason for that decision. Now, I may not be in the hearts of the legislators. However, there's been an outcry from young people, from citizens, that the primaries process are falling short of democratic principles, and that the power brokers in the party leaders and party instruments or machineries are hijacking the primaries process, thereby making it difficult for new players to come into the field, and that the delegate system is obviously not providing the kind of result we want that to provide. Now, that has been the argument for a long period of time. And ordinarily, I would jump into the whole conversation around, yes, direct primaries is the best option, and it provides its own positives and what have you. However, I think we must attend or address this issue with a lot of cautious optimism for different reasons. Now, I wanted to provide the context. Now, why do we have the conversation around direct primaries? The primaries process is the first process that determines who has access to ballots. Now, voters, citizens are only limited to the choices the parties produce. And if parties fail to produce a choice that would serve as what you call quality candidates for citizens to make the choices, it means that every time voters are limited to the choices that the parties produce, and most times we are made to choose between the devil and the deep blue sea. That is actually the truth, because you have primaries that produce candidates whom necessarily may not be the right candidate, but rather candidates that some individuals in the parties have decided that should be the candidate. So you have people on the ballot who do not necessarily stand for the interest of the citizens. And most times we are left to those options. So the process through which individuals emerge to have access to the ballot is very critical to our democracy, because at the end, our votes are only limited to those choices from the primaries process. So you wouldn't blame Nigerians for clamoring for a direct primaries. Now, why is direct primaries seen as an option that should be adopted at this level? Let us remember that our democracy is about 22 years. And if we've tried something over and over again for at least 5 electoral cycles, and it is not producing the kind of results we want, there's nothing wrong in trying something different. Now, this is an electoral, and let us remember it's not the constitution, meaning that we could try direct primaries for a period of time and it doesn't work. And there could be another proposal for a review. But why is there an interest of direct primaries? The direct primary, what does it seek to do? The idea of direct primaries is it opens up the space and decentralizes power to members of the parties, in the sense that when it comes to primaries, registered members, duly registered members are those individuals that would vote. And you're not limiting the powers to a select few who you would call the delegates in the delegate system. Ordinarily, the delegate system has its own pros and cons, its own pros. But what we've been seeing consistently is that indirect primaries has not given the parties, or rather members of the parties, a say or a voice during primaries. And it has limited its powers to a select few. In some elections that we have observed the primaries, in previous primaries, we have on good authority delegates that are paid in millions just to vote for a candidate during primaries. We have on good authority delegates whose role is basically to just choose whichever decision the power broker at the party level had decided. So what you have is a situation where if to the elections, primary elections, delegates maybe are convened in one location and are given incentives to make a particular decision at the expense of other parties, other candidates. So in itself, there's a major flaw in that. So giving an option for direct primaries, I think it has its positives. And yes, it may not be perfect, but perhaps we need to try it also to see how that works if parties adopt to that. But I think there are three important things that we need to consider as we proceed in conversation around direct primaries, because direct primaries may have its pros, but as parties are structured now, it may not function as we want to see that in 2023. And why do I say that? To have a credible, transparent, inclusive direct primaries, you need at the minimum a register of voters, an updated register of members, rather, of a party. Now, without that, the process in itself is flawed. If you don't have a register of members, the process in itself is flawed. That is one. The second, you need a strict compliance to the guidelines on the conduct of direct primaries. And honestly, if our political leaders and political parties want to truly build a democracy that works in Nigeria, this will be something that can be achievable. But third, you also need to decide the modality. Now, every party can decide the modality on which their primaries could be conducted. There's an intention that voting could happen at the lowest level, from the polling unit to the ward level to the LGA levels. And I know there's a lot of conversation around logistics, even for the Electoral Commission, who has the duty to monitor these primaries. However, I believe that within the system, when parties agree on the modalities of voting, or even look for new ways to deploy technology for its processes, or look for new ways to adopt to manage its logistics, this could be achievable. And why is this an important conversation that we need to have now? Because for me, it's let us try something that works. If indirect has not been working the way we want it to work, can we explore this? And I think it's important I state this at this point. There's a reason, I must have mentioned it, the reason behind the context for this. Why do we have the governors running all around, pushing for a review of this? Because at the end, the governors are not the party leadership. So why the major interest in this process? And I think it's important we state here that we need governors who are willing to let the process of democracy work. What we've seen over a period of time are governors always looking for ways to take over the system at the state level, and only decisions that they make are decisions that stand. We currently have a situation where state.
Okay, Cynthia, I'm still going to stay with you because you raised a topic that is of interest to me, and that is about women. Let's look at how the Electoral Act as amended will. Okay, we can't go to her. Let's come back to the studio. Okay, can you hear me? Cynthia, I said
Yes.
you touched on a topic that, is of interest to me, and that's about women participation in politics and seeking elective office. How will this, this Electoral Act that has been passed into law, affect women participation in politics? Because Honorable Benjamin Kalu raised an issue that it will be good for the not too young to run bill. Let's have your take on that.
Yeah, so that is one of the points I mentioned. The direct primaries has a potential of promoting inclusive politics. And that is because with direct primaries, women and young people have a fairer chance to contest and compete. They may not have the sufficient funds to mobilize delegates, but if they stand a chance of winning, it will be through direct primaries. And why is that so? Because all they need to focus is getting the members of the parties to believe in their candidacy and vote for them during the primaries. Now, it only takes so much to bribe all members of the registered parties. But like I mentioned, while this is important for women and youth inclusion, because what it does, it decentralizes power, it leaves powers to the hands of the members of the parties. But we cannot have direct primaries if the parties do not have register of members. We need to ensure that in these whole conversations, that one of the things we are putting in place is that parties have updated register of members, so that we know that only members of the parties are voting. Now, the responsibility would now be on women, on young people, to get active in political parties, to ensure that they mobilize members, their colleagues, to register in political parties, so that they are sure that, yes, they have members who will stand behind them. But honestly, direct primaries provides an opportunity for women to compete on an equal footing with the male counterpart, and even for young people, because this time around we'll be trying out something where and that limits the influence of delegates and influence of money in the process. However, like I keep saying, we must approach this with cautious optimism, because there's a lot that needs to be in place for this process to be transparent. And it includes ensuring that we have a clear guideline for the conduct of primaries, beginning from the register of members. This is the most fundamental point for direct primaries to be credible, to be transparent and inclusive. And I believe post the passage of this bill into law, we do not want a delay in the amendment, in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill to be passed. We need it to be passed this year. But we post that, the Electoral Commission will be coming out with guidelines for direct primaries, and parties would also adopt theirs. Hopefully, we'll try this and see how it works. Like I said, it's an Electoral Act amendment. If this doesn't work for us, we can always go back to the drawing table and review the bill or the Electoral Act.
All right, Cynthia, thank you very much for your perspective. I was just wondering, gentlemen, the remainder of the time we have, we're slightly pressed now. When you say it is the business of the parties to get the authentic register of their members, that also means that it is the business of the parties to put their house in order. And if, therefore, a political party doesn't have an authentic register of its members and purpose to go ahead to conduct direct primaries, that is a nullity. Right now, the litigation, the SAN is here, around the issues of primaries has to do with which executive committee of the party is the authentic one that conducted the primaries. That is why you are arguing. That's why you are having parallel congresses and so on and so forth. But now it will get to whether internally that political party itself was working. Did you have an authentic register of voters? If you didn't have that, I can't see any reason why the law courts will not strike down the outcome of such primaries. And in any case, we have more than one political party. Other political parties will then take advantage of it. So put your house in order. I'm wondering, Dr. Leonard, is there why you want to respond to those issues? Plus, the following, let's clarify this. You say the scrapping of state independent electoral commissions didn't feature in this, but that is a function of the constitutional amendment, and we understand that that's a matter that's already been tabled before the appropriate committees. You also said that direct primaries would now warrant the political parties to amend their constitutions because already they have provisions for direct or indirect. But it's also the case, I believe, that party constitutions are inferior to statutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the core things that we need to address before we go into whether it is direct or indirect primaries. Now, the last speaker, Cynthia, has touched on many issues, many areas that impact political parties comprehensively. The parties are not saying that direct primary is not a good model to be tried. What we're saying is the motivation and the way and manner this was inserted looks a little bit as an afterthought. And so that motivation is what we're interrogating and questioning why it has to be done that way. Now, all of us, I keep saying this, it is our desire that the electoral system and the polity is stabilized in all forms, in all ramifications. It is our happiness, our desire that all, whether the young, the aged, the PWDs, every person has to be involved in the effort to build an enduring democracy that is transparent, credible, free, and fair. That is the position of my council. However, we need to also understand that in getting back to the political parties have its own challenges. And part of the challenges we have to also see is the recruitment recruitment of members of political parties. Now, when you have a system where the people are not driven by clear-cut ideological underpinnings that drives whatever they do, it's always a problem. For instance, you have several persons who are members of one political party at the same time they're also members of other political parties. Now, what they do essentially is that when they see a high level of activity in a political party at a particular period, they partake in the activity of that particular period. When they see another political party also having events, activities, they also participate in it. Now, you find them being members of one political party at the same time being another member of political parties. These are some of the things political parties, the challenges political parties have on how to get these members to stick to one political party. And so what we need to find out is how creatively we build trust around the political system, on the electoral system, where people begin to believe and also stick one political parties. That has been a problem. The other problem we also have, which Cynthia also partly said, the guidelines on how this direct primary, the guidelines on how this primary should be done should be clinically done in such a manner that all stakeholders understand is very clear and it is also better for every person. So at the end of the day, it will be a win-win for every one of us. The third thing we need to also notice is this continuous issue of we and them, the political parties, the politicians, and the people. A division is being struck, or a deliberate effort is being put in place to divide every person. Now, it is the desire of political parties to constitutionally and by electoral act do what is right for every person. It is not the desire of political parties to put the political system in disarray. The point I'm making is this: if we decide at the end of the day, based on the conversation we're having, that direct primary is the best thing that will happen, is direct primary going to stop adoption? Is it going to stop godfatherism? Have we looked at it? Will it stop godfatherism? Is direct primary going to stop imposition of candidates? Will direct primary going to stop vote buying? These things, take my word for it, direct primary will not stop these vices, electoral vices. It will still stick with us. It is how are we sincere? How are we sincere to do the right thing to help the political system? So the point I'm making now is we need to have a larger conversation.
Dr. Leonard Ezenwa, we are actually, out of time completely. And we thank you so much for your points. And we'll come back briefly to the studio before we go to join Honorable Benjamin Kalu. Honorable Benjamin Kalu, you've listened to him. How will the Electoral Act passed, affect, our do away with godfatherism and, other things that is involved in, indirect primaries? How do our youths have the guts, the confidence to come out and say, I want to contest and I'm going to win?
Yeah, I want to thank Cynthia from Yaga, and also thank Dr. Zenwa for his contribution, but somehow I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that aspersion on how the Electoral Act, Section 87 that we are referring to, the clause of Clause 87 we're referring to, was inserted. He used that word. He was uncomfortable with the way it was inserted. That wasn't.
Was it inserted?
It was not inserted. It was a product of continuous engagement with the people of Nigeria. If you go and check our public hearing report, you will see it there that this is what the people wanted. The civil society organization, this was what they suggested. The ordinary people on the street, this was what they wanted. Members of various political parties wanted this, because this is how you increase and advance your democracy. And some of the questions he raised, will he stop vote buying? The answer is yes. Is he going to stop godfathering? The answer is yes. Let's be bold to say that.
You didn't have a godfather when you contested.
No, it's not. I had a political leader. But you see, what happened in my case was that direct primaries saved me. A young lady came up. I've been working in the political structure for 17 years with my foundation. And the young lady came up 3 months to the election and was seen everywhere. And we found out that she was being engineered from, remotely controlled from a source. When the election finished, they were doubting that I won the election. You know what saved me? Was those people who lied and we took videos. The national office of my party requested for those videos. They requested to see the photographs. They requested to see interviews made. And that was what saved me. A compilation of the evidence that shows that people actually came out and they queued behind my poster was what saved me. That is the truth. And if you want...
Was it your handsome face on your poster?
I don't know if it was if my face is handsome, but the truth remains, if we really want to open up the space, if we really want to have participation, when we talk about participatory democracy, it should not be reserved to the exclusive few. And that is why so many people who have value to add to our democratic system, they are running away because they know no matter how good they are, a certain few will decide their fate. It ought not to be so. So we are opening up the space. We are trying to make sure that position will not be defined by their pocket. It will be defined by how popular they are within the grassroots.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Benjamin Kalu, spokesperson of the House of Representatives, for your contribution to our discussion this morning.
Thank you very much.
Deep thanks also to Tanimo Inua, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He is Director in charge of litigation and prosecution at the Independent National Electoral Commission. Thank you very much, Leonard Senior Advocate.
Thank you.
We also would like to thank Dr. Leonard Nzenwa, Chairman, Interparty Advisory Council, IPAC. Thank you very much, Dr. Nzenwa, for your viewpoints. Last but not least, Cynthia Mbamalu, Director of Programs at Yaga Africa. Always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, so that's it for us on the program today. Tomorrow is another day. Do take care of yourselves. I'm Kingsley Saturday.
And I am Jumo Yusuf. Do have a great day, but don't forget to join NTA in the fight against rape and rapists.